Right. You can start, Caroline. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Roberto. So, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our final day of the symposium on benchmarking spatial justice. It has been a super interesting event so far, both on the campus but also online. And for today, I'm really super happy, and we are all really happy that Professor Benham Tabi has agreed to give a keynote. And Benham Tabi is a full professor of energy and climate ethics and the scientific director of the Safety and Security Institute at TU Delft. He also leads the TU Delft The Hague, which aims to bring the engineering knowledge closer to the heart of international public policy and politics. And without further ado, because we have very, very short time tonight, I would like to give you the floor, Benham, for your presentation.
Thank you very much, Caroline. Thank you, Roberto, and thank you, Juliana, for inviting me to be with you today. Let me also immediately share my screen and in the presentation modes. I assume you can see that in that modus. Thank you very much. This is a great opportunity to be with some of the TU Delft colleagues and also your participants in a very important and interesting intellectual discussion that we have on justice. I'm going to talk about energy justice. Your conference is about spatial justice, but as far as I'm concerned, those are basically intellectual siblings because they tap into the same sort of intellectual source. So I'll try to come back to that throughout my presentations also. Disclaimer and acknowledgement. This presentation is based on 2 papers. The last one has got published actually 2 weeks ago. It was under review for a very long time. But basically, I am bringing in some insights, and it's partially presented based on a co-authored paper with 2 colleagues from TU Delft, Nienke van Uffelen and Udo Pesch. Energy justice is essentially actually a normative issue. That's one of the starting assumptions for our presentation or for this presentation. So energy justice has a conceptual and analytical aim, but it has also been used to evaluate policy. So not only to assess what's going on, but also to normatively evaluate policy. So the approach is essentially normative in nature, and it aims to make energy systems more just, to say it very briefly. This normative aspect has, however, been underdeveloped because very often academic papers stop at the mere observation that justice matters. Very often they observe that distributive justice matters without sort of getting into the details of what that exactly means, or there is only a one-dimensional interpretation of justice that is presented. So what we miss in these discussions is that, and that's basically also the aim, or perhaps a claim that I have in this presentation, that we have defended the joint paper also. Energy justice scholarship would benefit from an explicit articulation of the normative nature by focusing on what we call normative uncertainties. What are normative uncertainties? Those are situations in which there is a normative question to which you could answer in different ways, perhaps even in diverging ethical ways. So it's not a question that you could answer in only one way. There might be ethical questions that could be answered in that fashion, but as we all know, many ethical questions are actually much more nuanced, and there needs to be actually sort of a more diverse answer to it, and that is what we call in this talk normative uncertainty. Spelling out normative uncertainty would contribute to a more legitimate decision-making and policies. I'll focus on 3 things. In the interest of time, I'll go very briefly through them. If you would like more explanation, I would be happy to provide you with some more explanation in this session, or of course afterwards. Please feel free to reach out. First, I'll argue that normative uncertainty matters in energy transition. Then I focus on the normativity in energy justice scholarship and present you a quick empirical review we did in the literature. And third, I'll focus on what it means actually to articulate normative uncertainties in energy justice. Now, we all know net zero in 2050. COP28 is as ongoing as we speak. And we also know that we need to actually reach at 2050 much faster. This is not a linear decline of emissions. We need to have a rapid decline by 2040. So 2040 should be almost as good as net zero, or it should be 90 to 90% reduction of greenhouse gases, which means a major effort internationally. And it means that when achieving these goals, we will come across a lot of important ethical issues. And those ethical issues in the energy-related issues have often been subsumed under the heading of energy justice. A recently launched notion that you might say, but again, as I said, a lot of these discussions are intellectual siblings, and energy justice has its roots, as does spatial justice to the extent that I'm familiar with it. They have both their roots in the grassroots movements in the 1980s and a lot of the environmental justice literature. So energy justice taps into the same resources and literature, but has expanded very much also as social science, not only in philosophy, but also social science literature over the last 6, 7, 8 years. I'm sorry, my computer is very uncooperative in going to the next slide every time. So it doesn't take a lot of effort to argue that justice matters, because there is a lot of important justice or ethical issues, you could say, if you like, in energy-related decisions and technologies. But how ethics matters, or how justice exactly matters, or what it exactly means, that is a whole different discussion. When dealing with these ethical questions of energy transition, we will inevitably run into what we call normative uncertainties. Normative uncertainties are situations in which there is no one course of action that is fully morally defensible, or when there are different actions partially morally defensible, which means that a normative assessment is needed before you could arrive at a normative conclusion. For instance, different groups of people exposed to different risks at different times. So there are different actually normative assessments and different ways of dealing with normative questions. And it's not that we could argue that one is better than the other. It's all about actually what kind of normative choices we make and the substantiation of those choices. A very tentative taxonomy of normative uncertainties with respect to climate risk is actually the following. I'm not going to bore you with the details of this table, but if you were interested, you could have a look. This is a paper in which we sort of distinguish between 4 types of normative uncertainties, being evolutionary, theoretical, conceptual, and epistemic. And if I may elaborate a little bit, evolutionary normative uncertainty, it says that both our understanding of what is good in the society and technology will progress in the future. So what is good could also change 10, 20, 50 years in the future. A good example, a very common example, is the notion of sustainability that barely existed 50 years ago. And nowadays, public policy is at least presumably based on sustainability and intergenerational justice. So something that was not there has been developed and entered public policy. So that is what I would like to call an instance of evolutionary normative uncertainty. Our understanding of what is good in the society has changed. And of course, what we can do in terms of actually ensuring the interests of future generations have changed too. Moving on to discussion on normativity in energy justice scholarship. Energy justice and energy ethics are different terms again, and a lot of these notions are revolving around the same issues and discussions. Popped up in around 2010 and early 2010s, and those were basically the first authors who engaged with these discussions. You see their names on the slide. Of course, their names are not a surprise for you, but I thought it's important to acknowledge actually the first who started or reignited discussions on justice and energy-related issues. And you're also familiar with the tenets. And I have seen that also your book of abstracts starts sort of with spelling out at least 3 of these 4 tenets: the procedural, the distributive and procedural justice and justice's recognition. The potential 4th tenet could also be restorative justice, but again, it's all a matter of definition. But basically, it's a claim that justice matters in energy-related issues. Energy justice has 2 aims. If you look at the literature, a lot of work is trying to analytically describe, so it's descriptive, and present analytical tools to examine where normative issues lie. There is a second aim in this literature, and that is normative justice, energy justice in terms of normative evaluation. So it will normatively evaluate and assess what is it that should be done, what is it that should be chosen, how could we actually ensure and incentivize just transition, for instance. However, there has been no systematic analysis of these normative claims in energy justice scholarship. So whether, how, and how frequently normative claims are being made, we do come across them, but there has not been a study on mapping them. And that is what we tried to do in one of these two papers that I mentioned to you in the beginning. So we did a literature review of over the last almost 10 years in which the energy justice literature started expanding. And we analyzed 179 articles by focusing on the tenets that have been referred to, how each tenet was defined, whether the normative statement was made in terms of something is just or something is just unjust, or a policy recommendation was made. Recommendations are often actually rooted in normative assessment of what is right and what is wrong, and whether or which justification or principle of justice were formulated for articulated normative claims. So interestingly enough, and again, I expect this to be almost similar when it comes to spatial justice literature, that distributive justice is the one that is discussed most often. And the distributive, procedural, and recognition, those three tenets are the ones that you see actually, again, most often in combination. Those are the three most often discussed tenets. And again, I would be happy to talk more about it, but because I don't want to sort of focus too much on the empirical findings, but present the argument mostly here, I'm going to skip actually to the next part of the presentation, but we also focused on the principles of justice here and which principles have been used and where have they been found actually in the literature on energy justice and energy ethics. To wrap up the presentation, part 3, how to articulate normative uncertainties in energy justice. So far I argued that there is a notion of normative uncertainty that matters in energy justice, but again, the question is, how do we spell out these normative issues and normativity in energy justice scholarship? So tenets are very important stakeholders. Justice's recognition, procedural justice, distributive justice are important placeholders for discussing a lot of moral issues. But at the same time, you could say that they are in need of further moral substantiation because they're only placeholders and things need to be filled in those placeholders. Principle of justice, as they have been discussed, they specify why, normatively speaking, something is just or unjust. So principles are very often actually sort of a way of filling in what a tenet refers to as the type of justice issue, and a principle puts more normative flesh on the bones of those tenets, if you like. So the principle of distribution could, for instance, be aggregative. A lot of public policy is utilitarian, based on greatest number, greatest happiness for the greatest number, or greatest utility for the greatest number. They could be sufficientarian. They could be prioritarian. Prioritize, for instance, the poorest in the community based on something, the thinking of John Rawls. So there are different principles of justice with which, to just give an example about distributive justice, we could arrive at different normative conclusions. And again, it's not easily to be said that one is right and the other conclusion is wrong. It's much more about actually the choices that we make and the reason that we make those choices. So the tenets are important stakeholders by the need to actually be sort of further normatively filled in. There are 4 aspects that could help us to better articulate normative uncertainties in energy justice. The scale of justice, whether justice is considered at a local, national, regional, or multinational or global scale. That is something that often remains unclear, actually, when papers talk about justice. The subject of justice, or to whom does justice accrue? Very often we assume that justice discussions are merely anthropocentric discussions, but more recent discussions and more recent public interest also is on non-anthropocentric approaches, for instance, non-human animals. So how does justice relate to the interests of those groups? And is justice also the right lens of looking at it? But again, it's a very interesting sort of issue that you could focus on and could be source of discussion. The body of knowledge that is assumed, because there is a lot of epistemic issues underlying justice also, whose body of knowledge matters, could again lead to different conclusions. How do you include local knowledge is a very sort of topical question in a lot of public policy questions. And the time frame in which justice is considered, particularly looking into the future. How do we consider actually the interests of future generations, and which future generations do we consider in our energy justice discussions? So basically, if we want to revisit energy justice framework, we need to think about the 4 tenets and the 4 assumptions that I mentioned, and you need to actually focus on how the principles of justice would actually relate to different or arrive at different normative conclusions. to spell out more the normative issues underlying energy justice discussions. So I think it's very important that we would appreciate normative uncertainties. Societies need to deal with diverse and sometimes diverging ethical opinions. Also, those opinions entail, for instance, what justice exactly say. What is the meaning of justice and what justice exactly say? So the plurality of opinions in the society is one source of normative uncertainty, you could say. Again, there are opinions that could be considered as right and as wrong. Particularly, you could say that certain opinions are wrong. You don't need to actually subsume them under the heading of normative uncertainties, but there is still a pretty large gray scale of what could be considered potentially right if the following would be the case. And there, that is actually within the realm of that gray scale, you see a lot of normative uncertainties rise. So I think normative uncertainties need to be identified and to the extent possible dealt with, and it should be done at an early stage of decision-making process, because often if we observe them afterwards, you can only compensate or try to restore, but the better way would be actually to be aware of them and include them in public policy at the forefront of the policy making. And it is indeed complicated. Appreciating the ethical subtleties and normative uncertainties is a rather complex issue, both conceptually, what is justice exactly, and empirically, how to actually assess, how do we arrive at a conclusion of what is normative uncertainty. But to be fair, this complexity is not something that is created by the notion of uncertainty. It's the other way around. The notion of normative uncertainty would hopefully help us to better understand and relate to these ethical subtleties at stake that often remain unclear or sort of dealt with in a one-dimensional fashion in terms of understanding justice in only one way. There is unfortunately no alternative. The alternative is either accepting stalemates, as we are already familiar with a lot of public policy discussions, or again, filling injustice in only one way, which would be not acknowledging the plurality of ethical opinions. I think I'm going to leave it at that. Back to you, Caroline. Love to hear your comments and any questions. I'm going to stop sharing so that we could see each other.
Thank you so much, Behnam. That was a very, very insightful presentation. I think it also connects very well to some earlier discussions we had during the day. So I'm really happy to open the floor for questions. We have, I think, 5 minutes, Roberto. That is okay. So 1 or 2 questions.
Well, I will kick off the conversation. So thank you so much for your presentation. Super insightful. And I was wondering, I have 2 questions, but let's keep it short. We are really concerned about how we use justice as a way to evaluate and design policy, right? And where can we find more guidelines about that in the literature or in your own writings?
Thank you very much, Roberto, for that question. I think it's part of this needs to still be developed, because we have a lot of discussions on justice and what justice means, and energy justice is also borrowing intellectually a lot from the discussions in the 1980s, as I said, and the environmental issues that were at stake in the grassroots movement, and has been further related, sort of evolved around the notions of what does justice exactly mean in, let's say, wind parks, the major energy projects that we are introducing, and then trying to spell out the situations in a sort of in a local setting, because those could also matter from place to place. I think it could be there could be some inspiration in some of this literature, because a lot of empirical work has been done. We have also collaborated with colleagues here at TU Delft on issues, for instance, on better understanding the large-scale energy projects and the controversies, and arriving from the controversies to the justice issues, because a lot of public claims are in terms of justice. So that could be hopefully a little bit of a sort of one step in the right direction. But I think those need to be spelled out for every single project specifically, by which there is a good starting point, but what it exactly means could be done locally. And I think another thing that I need to emphasize, because in my presentation I didn't say, is that a lot of these discussions are also very much Western discussions. When we sort of bring them down to what it exactly means, so the concerns elsewhere could be completely different, especially when we talk about global South. you could be actually talking about perhaps more fundamental justice issues at stake. And it's very important to acknowledge that this literature, as with many other fields, also this field has expanded mostly in global north. So the case studies are also, a lot of our work is about case studies in the Netherlands or in the UK or Switzerland. And there is fewer case studies. There is some work, of course, I should acknowledge there is some work, interesting work, absolutely. But the majority of the work is about global north. So this work about specific public policy project and against the background of the local setting, that would make it most valuable.
Thank you.
Can I kind of elaborate a bit on that? Because I'm really curious, and maybe it's hypothetical, but how do you protect these kind of essential justice principles if the political climate is changing? If the how do you make sure it's there in the policies and not easily kind of turned around again?
Caroline, that's a very good and very topical question living in the Netherlands at this moment. For those of you who are not following the political evolutions of the situations here, we have a far-right political party that has got 1 out of the 4 votes in the last national elections. And that is a reason for concern for many of us at least, among others, because they don't believe in climate change. So then again, the question is, how do we actually talk about climate justice or energy justice if there is fundamentally no belief, political belief in? I think it's the $1 million question of our time at this moment. My answer would be we need to sort of and that's sort of no more than like one hint of which direction we need to think. We need to include them as much as possible also in public policy in a way that it would go beyond the duration of one government. Easier said than done. Absolutely, I absolutely agree and know that. And it's also something that a lot of public policy officials, but also a lot of advisory bodies are grappling with at this moment, because those advisory bodies are thinking also to what extent would anything that they have said over the last couple of years matter, and to what extent does it matter that you bring in actually new insights from science and to public policy. So I think this is unfortunately going to be our biggest challenge, or one of our biggest challenge in the Netherlands, and I think unfortunately also several other countries around us. And let's hope that it wouldn't be a global trend, but this is something that we have seen under the Trump administration most vividly. So how scientific insight and knowledge are completely sort of disregarded, and issues such as justice don't even pop up as a term, not even as a window dressing term, because they don't matter anymore in the public policy. So I don't mean to sound very pessimistic here, because I do believe that eventually we are where we are. We have reached whatever we have reached also through public policy. So there is absolutely light at the end of the tunnel, but we might have to go through a tunnel for a bit.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that explanation, but also the kind of the positive point. And I want to finish this plenary session by thanking you again very much, Anna. It was, as said by Roberto as well, super insightful. So I think a round of virtual applause.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. And good luck with the rest of the conference.
And we will continue our conversation with you also later, I hope.
I would love that. Absolutely. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Have a lovely evening.
Well, everyone, we get to the point where we are going to our tracks. Of course, we have 4 tracks right now, 25, 26, 27, and 28. You should know which breakout room to go. Generally, the breakout room works well in the first attempt, so we will do it now with the breakout rooms. We have an alternative if it doesn't work later on, but for now, I'm just going to open the breakout rooms. Don't forget, you have to join the breakout room where you need to go, and then we start with the presentations. We do have your presentations in file, but it's best if you can share from your own computer so you can change the slides yourself. Okay, I don't think there are any questions. I'll just open the rooms and then we go there. Is it working?
Yes, Roberto, I think it's working. See you later.
See you later.
Does anyone need help in finding the right room?
Yeah, I need help. I don't really know how to enter the room.
Okay, so at the bottom, sorry, I'm talking quietly. There's more other people in the room. At the bottom of the screen, of the window, you can find the three dots saying more. And when you click on that, you will have the breakout rooms. And then you will be able to choose the one you want to go to. And which room, it will be indicated in the program. So you have to find the session.
Yeah, I know. Wait. In the more I have like chat, questions and answers, application, subtitles, configuration of the meeting, boards, notes. I don't have like breakout rooms.
Okay, let me show you. Maybe
I'm in the track 25.
just a sec. Okay, can you see my screen? No?
Yes.
Okay, so sorry, there's a lot of windows that we don't need. So when I click here on more, at least on my computer, you have here choose breakout room.
Okay, but I'm seeing like your email.
Wait, because my email is
now.
underneath, so it's a bit tricky.
Yeah, no, I'm continuing seeing your email.
I know, but look, just look at the oh, maybe you just don't see it. Indeed, sorry, I cannot show you that. I cannot show you that because then this is the part of the screen that's not shown. But basically, on the bottom of the screen, next to the leave button, you have the more, and then choose breakout rooms should be there.
Okay, I'm gonna try like going out and enter again. Maybe it'll work. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know why I can't. I don't see like.
Let me try. I'll try to go in there myself to see if it works for me. So for me that worked. I could join breakout room 2. So maybe try again.
Yeah, it's because I don't see like the bottom. I have like the three dots, but I don't have the option to breakout room.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know how to help you then.
Okay, I'm gonna try like to enter like
on,
in another computer. Maybe it will work.
are you maybe accessing from the browser, or is it from the Zoom app?
No, I'm in the Zoom app, but will try with the.
Okay, please try another device because it
Okay.
should work. It should work.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Camila?
Hi,
Hello.
can you help me? I think
Yeah,
it's not working for me because it keeps loading, but no one accepts me.
no, sure. Yeah, but we're not supposed to use the alternative link yet. You can use the breakout room 2 here now because you are in the track 26, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so just go now. Let's go to room 2. Just choose the breakout room and then you can go to room 2. We are waiting for you there.
Sorry, but I can see any.
No worries.
Where can I? Ah, okay.
It's below. Can you see it now? Yes.
Hi. I also can't find my breakout room. I don't know where to go. I'm in breakout room 4.
Hello, does anyone need help finding the right room?
Hello.
Yes.
Yes, I didn't see any presentation on the.
Yes.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm Asmarja,
Yeah. Which session did you want to go to?
32.
32. Just a second.
It will be 17:30.
Yeah. So, yeah. So you still have some time, but it will be in the breakout room 4. It's at yeah, indeed, in a bit less than an hour.
Yes.
But to go there, you need to select a breakout room, and you do it at the bottom with the 3 dots. And then you can choose, you press the more, and there's the 3 dots, and then you can choose your breakout room.
Okay.
Right? But if you want to join a session now, that's also possible.
I can do the session just now. I didn't find the people and I don't understand why. Is it possible to present my work now?
No, I think, I mean, if you wasn't scheduled for this session now, then no. But you can listen to the other session and take part in the discussion.
Okay. I
Right?
didn't hear. Thank you.
Anyone else need some help?
Hi.
I hope everybody had time to finish. In our session, we did have time because we had a missing person, a missing presenter. I hope others also had time to finish.
Hey, Roberto.
Yeah.
We had
Did you have
time
to finish?
Yeah, we finished, but we had time for a very short discussion, but there were still a lot of questions left unanswered.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's the thing with these events online. When we are physically, at least we can control a little bit more. Let me see.
Roberto, do we have a 5-minute break?
Yes. We are going to have a 5-minute break, and we are going to to come back at 35. Is that the idea?
Yes.
Is that fine with everybody? Very short break. Then we come back for the second round. See you guys. Sorry for the rush.